Can Crayola actually make art fun again? Let's find out. Welcome back. I'm Christine, and this is Mike. I just bought a whole bunch of Crayola products, but the question is, are they fun or are they frustrating? And this is a Crayola video, so I have to bring out the crayons. I also got these watercolor crayons that I've tried before and I didn't love, but I'm giving them a second chance. I was surprised to see that they have erasable colored pencils, so these could be interesting. I'm also adding some watercolor pencils to the mix, swirl colored pencils, which look really fun. I bought these Twistables because I like the idea that I'll never have to sharpen them, and that's amazing to me. I'm using another itty bitty sketchbook because they make everything fun. Fun-sized art is what I like to call it. I'm starting with the watercolor crayons because I've used them before, but I didn't read the instructions. You're supposed to rub the crayon on this mat that comes with them, add water, and then start painting. Even though I followed the instructions, I'm still not impressed with these. No matter how many layers I add, the color stays the same. So I decided to get a little bit more creative with my approach. I started to use the watercolor crayons directly on the paper, and then I would take my brush to blend it out. They don't blend very well, but that's okay because I'm creating a sea wave. I want some of the lines to be a little bit darker so they stand out. And if you also have these Crayola watercolor crayons, don't be afraid to use your paintbrush and the crayon directly on the piece of paper, because that's what I found is getting me the best results. I added a chunky white highlight and a chunky black shadow, and I moved on to the left side of my spread because I'm feeling backwards today, and that's just how we're gonna do it. I'm using straight lines and adding additional colors to try and get something with more depth, but it's not working. I had to resort to the method I used before and blended the crayon directly on the paper. Since the watercolor crayons are failing me at this point, I brought in the Twistable colored pencils, but they don't work well either. Look, there's hardly any color going down on the page. I tried it again on the sea wave, but I had the same result. Ooh, sorry about the shaky camera. That's how hard I'm pressing. It's ridiculous. My little seascape-inspired texture and sea wave actually look pretty good considering I only used Crayola products, but I'm all about second chances, so let's move on and see what else I can create. I'm starting this spread the same way by applying the paint with my paintbrush. This time, I'm creating some little blue wiggles across the page. I'm terrible at making straight lines, so naturally I paint and draw things crooked. This is just a quirky art habit that I have, and I've just accepted it at this point. Now I'm adding some purple to create some darker areas. I'm not used to painting with watercolor, and I just realized that I covered all of the highlights for my clouds. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Crayola watercolor crayons again, and I'm just going to draw on the page to make even darker areas. Of course, that didn't work, so instead of beautiful puffy clouds, I give you a beautiful night sky. But this isn't any night sky. If you look up, you can see bubbles floating overhead. But it's missing something. Let's try these watercolor pencils. My first impression is that these are nice, but keep in mind that this is the first time I've ever used watercolor pencils. But if I had to choose between the Twistable pencils and the watercolor pencils, I'd pick the watercolor pencils. So I'm definitely going to keep using these throughout the video. I'm using my white watercolor crayon directly onto the paper to create some big, chunky highlights. I find that these types of illustrations always look really good with over-exaggerated highlights. This was a lot of fun, so let's try something else. Based on my previous experience, since simple equals fun, I decided to draw a tree. Like every little kid, I liked to draw trees with all of my Crayola products when I was little, So it just makes sense to draw a tree now. I'm going to make this tree a little bit more sophisticated than the childhood trees that I used to draw by using a new technique. Instead of blending this first layer with water, I ended up blending it with paint and water instead, and I think this helped a lot. Using this technique allowed me to blend out the original drawing that I put down, and then I was able to add another layer of paint on top to try and bring out some shadows of the tree on the left side. Now I'm having a lot of fun because I'm starting to learn how I need to use these products in order to get the result that I want. It's time to add in some leaves, and I learned my lesson from before. I'm making sure that I'm leaving a little bit of white in between each section that I add, and then I go back and I try to build up the color just a tiny bit to add that little bit of shadow and dimension to this cute little illustration. As I get closer to the top right, I just allow my paintbrush to run out of paint, and I'm kind of painting with water at this point, but it's the best way that I found to get a lighter variation of the color that I want to use. I don't like to use yellow, but I felt that if I added a little bit to the top of the tree, that it would make it look a little bit warmer and more inviting. This is where things get a little frustrating. I decided to keep building up my layers and add more color with my watercolor crayons and then blend it out with water. It looks really good right now, doesn't it? But in a moment, you're gonna see how the tree trunk just kind of vanishes. Like all of the color disappears because of all the water that I added to it. Like, look at this, where did it go? It's such a dramatic shift, which is why I decided to bring in some of my traditional crayons to finish this up. This mini watercolor sketchbook is filled with cold pressed watercolor paper. This means that the paper has a lot of texture. The texture of this paper is designed to hold a lot of pigment, but with something like a crayon, it sits on the surface instead of sinking into the grooves. And this is giving me that really cool texture. Using crayons makes me feel like a kid again, but I think it's time to make something a little more thoughtful. If you're new here, you may not know about my monster universe, but within the monster universe, I have a forest called Rainbow Whisper Woods. This forest is made up of magical trees that contain all of the colors of the rainbow. These trees are magical, so if you need any type of color, you can just go into the Rainbow Whisper Woods and find the color that you need for the art project that you're working on. I found it relaxing to add each color, and I enjoyed blending it into the color next to it. It kind of looks like I accidentally switched the orange and the yellow, but I think it's okay. I'm gonna keep going. I don't know if this is controversial or not, but sometimes I see rainbows end with purple, and other times I see them end with pink. So I put magenta on the end of my rainbow tree cluster. I think it looks nice. Whenever I see a rainbow without magenta or pink, I feel like it's incomplete. Is it just me? Is this a thing? I don't know. So this is fun. I'm having a good time. I'm building up more color on the bottom, and I'm so excited for it to dry, but then it looks like this. Why, Crayola? Where is the color going? I'm gonna try and save it by incorporating some of my swirl colored pencils. The idea behind these swirl colored pencils seems like it would be fun, but I was so wrong. I'm not having a good time with these. It might be a Christine problem. I think I just misunderstood the product because I thought that when I used them, that the colors indicated on the side of the pencils would come out randomly. In reality, there was no color shift. I basically had to manipulate the way I was holding the pencil to get the color that I wanted, which makes the whole idea of this product pointless. You can just use colored pencils. Heartbroken from another failed and frustrating Crayola purchase, I just switched back to my watercolor crayons, which are looking pretty good right now. Even though the colors fade when they dry, you always have the option of using the watercolor crayon directly on the paper to get a darker color. I would say that out of all of the products that we tried today, that the watercolor crayons are probably in the top 3. I used these watercolor pencils earlier, but I'm going to whip them out again just to show you how amazing they are. Look at how easily they go down on the paper. I would say that this is the best pencil that I've tried so far in this video. These work exactly how I would expect them to. I'm bringing in the crayons again because I want to get all of that good texture that we created earlier. I'm so happy that I was able to include something from my monster universe in this video. I have so much to get done for the final book, but creating little thumbnails and doodles like this are something that I can come back to in the future when I tackle the larger project. I always try to keep my viewers in mind, and I think that it's fun to just see the behind the scenes of everything and then how it all comes together in the end. But enough about that, let's get back to this Crayola video. For the next idea, I wanted to try using these erasable colored pencils, and they didn't disappoint. They don't feel as creamy as the Prismacolor Kohl Erase pencils, but they do come sharpened and they don't break a lot. I'm drawing a little fish inside of a bubble, which ties into the current story from my monster universe. They're supporting Nimbus, which is this giant sea turtle that's ushering all of the creativity between both worlds. Originally, both worlds were connected by the Rainbow Bridge, but it was destroyed. It's a whole thing. It's a giant collaboration that I started on my channel, so if you're interested in finding some new artists, be sure to check out that playlist at the end of this video. I'm so glad that I finally get to paint one of these fish close up, and I saved the best for last because I'm using the watercolor pencils with the watercolor crayons, and I think those are the 2 products that I used in this video that work extremely well together. I'm able to paint in some of the larger areas using the watercolor crayons, and then I'm able to go in with my watercolor pencil and add darker colors and details on top. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but these watercolor pencils come pre-sharpened. I feel like if I'm buying a watercolor pencil, it should come pre-sharpened. That's a qualification that's just on my list. I want to be able to get it home, open it up, and use it right away. While I'm being extremely picky, I think it's worth mentioning that I didn't have any trouble with these pencils breaking whenever I sharpened them, which is impressive because other brands like Prismacolor just seem to break all the time. I don't know what the issue is, but it's annoying. We have to have a serious talk now because, like I said, this is the first time I've ever used watercolor pencils, and I'm in love. Who was gonna tell me that they're so much fun? If there's a specific brand of watercolor that you enjoy using, let me know in the comments below because I would love to use more watercolors in the future. Since these products have a lot of limitations, I had to be extremely intentional with where I put my highlights, where I decided my shadow should be, and what lines should be thicker or thinner in order to make this an interesting spread. As you add in your shadows, highlights, and your thick lines, try to frame the subject in a way that draws your eye into the picture. So in this case, my thicker lines are on the outside of the fish, and my highlights are on the top of the fish. The shadows are on the bottom. It kind of makes sense if you think about it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today and playing with all of these Crayola products. Here are the final rankings for each product that I played with in today's video. And if you want to check out my giant Pantone collaboration and meet a whole bunch of really cool artists, go ahead and click the link on the screen.